And most of us are emotionally fused to each other, where we have to think like each other. We have to act like each other. What we really need is differentiation. We need to be who we are wholly and stand on our own 2 feet and then bring that to the relationship.
That's Matthew Distefano. Alongside with Keith Giles, they are the co-founders of Quoir Publishing, where they write and publish at the intersection of spirituality and storytelling. Their media company helps creatives give language to ideas that don't fit into cutesy-wootsy little boxes. And in this conversation, we talk about how to share your work when you're still evolving, when certainty is gone, relationships are at stake, and false humility can quietly try to come in and keep you from sharing your work. This is Keith Giles and Matthew Distefano. Let's imagine that you both are sitting on an airplane and there's a stranger sitting next to you and they casually look over and they say, "What do you do for a living?" How do you choose to respond to that?
I just tap my ears and say, I got headphones in, man.
Me too. That's usually realistically, I just ignore them and
I'm an introvert.
My book. I just read my book. Whatever book.
Well, they're like me. They're one of those annoying people who keep pressing what you say to them.
Well, if it was you, that's different. Yeah,
that's different.
I'll be like, "Can I switch seats, please?"
This guy does not want to talk.
Yeah.
Keith, what about you? I'll go with you first.
Okay. What do I do for a living? Well, so I'm tempted to come up with some deep, profound, inspirational answer to that question. But honestly, I actually have been thinking about this just a couple of days ago and realizing that kind of what I do for a living is I write books, but I also sell books. And I've actually become, as far as making a living, it's more about selling books. And not just my own books, and not even just the books that Matthew and I publish with Quoir Publishing, but other books too. Like I've started this little side business where I go to bookstores and I buy like used science fiction paperbacks
and flip them.
And yeah,
Flip Life is where it's at.
Wait, yeah. What? This is new to me, man.
No.
Wait,
okay.
You've never told me this.
Okay. So no, dude. So on Saturday, this past Saturday, I got up early. I got there an hour before they opened to get into the El Paso Main Public Library, Friends of the Library bookstore, because they had posted photographs of the science fiction, collection someone donated. And I picked up about 35 books for $1 each. One of those books is worth $400. Another book is worth $100. Several others are worth like $40 or $50. And of course, some of them were for me. I just wanted to collect them. But I just realized that's kind of what I do. I'm a bookseller at a basic level.
Purveyor of books, man.
I'm a purveyor of books. Yes.
Matthew, what would you say to that annoying stranger?
I'm just kidding about them being annoying. That's more about me. I like talking to people. I do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit. I publish books. I design all of Quoir's books. I write my own books. I podcast. But I also farm. Like I've started a farm that I'm building. So I'm like living like the real life Stardew Valley. And then I also work with an amazing sourdough company, and I sling bread across Northern California.
My husband recently got into bread making. It's the best, being married to somebody who makes bread. I'll tell you what, I'll just eat it and he makes it. Why books, y'all? Why books? At the end of the day, what it is there's stories, there's opinions, there's people's souls and spirits and quirks and all these things that are regurgitated on a page and stamped forever. What led you both to that, Matthew? I'll start with you.
I think that's kind of it right there. You said it in the question, like putting your, like the story you have we all have a story to tell, right? And some of us hone our storytelling abilities over time and some of us don't. And a book for me is something to say like, you don't know when something's going to impact something, and a book can impact someone hundreds of years after your life. I was thinking about, and Kate Bush is still alive, but I'm a huge Stranger Things fan. Like, Kate Bush was not a huge artist in the 80s at all. And then like 30 years later, she has like the number one song because of this show. And I'm just thinking, like, imagine just being there one day and all of a sudden you're like, hey, your song Running Up the Hill is number one. And you're like, no, shut up. This is a bad prank. So you'd really never know your impact on the world. And for me, it's like, it takes a book sometimes to share all my thoughts, like 200 pages. I write articles and things like that, and that's great. But like, 1,200 words I'm hardly even started yet. Right.
I'm going to let's just go into the deep end now. Keith, I'll direct this one to you. I don't know, Matthew, as much about if your histories and ministry. We'll get there in a second. But Keith, I know you were a former pastor. And to be honest with you, one of the things I've struggled with the most as I've come to terms that I'm a creative person, which I never thought that before. But I've noticed a hesitancy inside of myself to put things down and say things out loud. And because I've deconstructed so much of my beliefs, and I was so freaking certain about so many things in my 20s. I probably could have wrote 30 books then. And now that I'm 40, almost 40, now I see myself hesitating a little bit more, sharing my ideas, because I remember how certain I was, and now I'm not so certain about anything. This is a deep-ass question, but when you think about putting your words, like cementing them, in a book, and then you're evolving as a human. We're like 5 minutes in, but how do you navigate that?
Oh no, it's a really good question. Matthew and I have both experienced this, where like I've been writing, well, since I was a kid. I've been writing. I love writing, but I mean publishing books probably since like 2014, 15, something like that. So a long time. And I go back to those earlier books that I wrote, and many of them, I kind of disown them. I don't want people to look them up and find them and read them, because that's not me anymore. Even some books that I wrote even like maybe 5 years ago, there's certain things in some of those books, and I'm like, yeah, I would change that. I don't believe that anymore. And that's, it's a struggle. It's a challenge, but I think actually that's a good thing. Because we all should be growing, and we all should be learning, and we all should be, open to changing our minds about things. And so one thing that I try to do when I'm writing my books and publishing my books is to not share it from this dogmatic place of like, I'm right. It's more of like, hey, right now this is where I'm leaning, or this is what I think. But, because otherwise you end up embarrassing yourself. Like if you're super certain, this is right, and then a few years later you change your mind, it's like, oops. So yeah.
Could you imagine writing? Could you imagine being like, what is Joshua Harris, Kissing Dating Goodbye?
Oh yeah.
Like writing something like that, and then just being on the other side, like.
But he did, right? He changed.
But he did.
Yeah.
And now, and two, I feel like he's able to make such a greater, deeper impact by coming out of that, in the way that he's using his platform now, not to derail on that.
About that, yeah.
It took a lot of courage. It took a lot of courage to be like, yo, I was wrong. And this was,
Oh, yeah.
Matthew, what is your background? Did you come from ministry too?
I mean, so I was involved in music my whole life. So I was involved in a bunch of different, I wasn't like an ordained pastor or anything, but I was like the utility guy, because I played like almost every instrument that they needed. So I played on every worship team imaginable in my youth and in my early 20s. But yeah, I was involved that way. So all volunteer. I was never paid for it, but I was very involved with the. Well, yeah, I mean, free labor for a bass player and a drummer and a guitarist. And so I was involved in the whole church life, but not in a official, like work capacity.
You weren't on staff. Yeah.
I wasn't on staff. No.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the short version of how things burned to the ground for you?
Oh, well, I'm also bisexual, so that was a part of it. But Yeah, I was always really a questioner, and I always had like issues with the things I was say. I was never convinced of all the things that I quote unquote believed.
Yeah.
I wasn't passionate. I wasn't like, no, this is what I believe, and I need to go tell people. Like, I never talked to anyone about anything.
Yeah.
Just because like I was just so I was struggling all the time with like these answers that we had in the church. And so it was like it was a slow process if you look at like, oh, well, I had these questions when I was like 10 or whatever. But once I was able to articulate my questions, and it went pretty quick. It was like hell was a big one, the rapture was a big one, and sexuality was a big one, because I couldn't look at my gay and queer friends and be like, oh, well, you basically live the same life I do, but somehow one thing is sinful and me and my wife aren't. But it's literally like the gay agenda is like grocery shop and balance your budget and raise your kids and make sure your bills are paid. Like, it was just stupid for me to say, oh, well, that's sinful. But then because my wife's a woman or my spouse is a woman, like somehow it's not. And so it's like real life didn't add up, didn't like jive with like what I was told was true.
Yeah. Keith, what about you? What burned things to the ground? And I'm just using that as a metaphor. I know y'all have done a lot of building back up over the years.
Yeah. It was kind of a slow burn, but yeah, I was licensed and ordained as a minister, served at a bunch of different churches. I mean, basically, the short version is, as a licensed and ordained minister who was on staff at a church in Southern California and had been serving in ministry for probably like at least 8 or 9 years at that point, to suddenly realize that I didn't understand what the gospel was. Like, someone had to say to me, the gospel's not about saying a prayer so you can go to heaven when you die. And I was, what? I had no idea. And so that just really made me stop and rethink. I thought, you know what, if I got that wrong, that's a pretty foundational thing for a Christian, right? And a minister. If you don't understand what the gospel is, what else am I wrong about? What else am I misunderstanding? And so that kind of sent me down a path of questioning. We ended up stepping away from that church and started something completely crazy, like people just meeting in homes and collecting, offering to care for the people that were living in homelessness or experiencing homelessness in Southern California. And it was really great because it wasn't a church in the sense of like we didn't have a 501c3, we didn't have a building, we didn't have a statement of faith. It was just people that loved Jesus and loved other people and wanted to help other people and wanted to try to figure out what Jesus was all about. So it was a really simple thing, but pretty radical. So yeah, that's kind of what pushed me in that direction. And pretty much once I started going in that direction, I started questioning things, and I realized, yeah, I never received a Christian education. I thought I had, but what I realized was what I had received was an indoctrination, meaning I was only told certain things and things were kept from me. Like, oh, like education, a true education would have said, Keith, historically the church has believed this and this and this on this topic. And, you should look at all of them and decide for yourself which one makes the most sense for you. And I was never given that option. I was only given one option as the quote unquote correct or true option. So yeah, kind of like what Matt was saying, learning to think for myself and make up my own mind about things. Yeah, that's kind of what did it.
How did y'all meet?
Yeah, so I don't. Keith had published with Quoir, which is the company we now own, but we were not the founders. I don't remember how you could tell the story how you met Ralph. I don't even remember how I met Ralph, our founder, but I had published with Whippenstock, which is a pretty big Christian publisher. And I think Ralph must have found me through that, or I submitted something. I somehow heard of Quoir. And so we met through Quoir by publishing books, but then we got to know each other because Quoir was always envisioned not just as a publisher, but as like a media company. And so we had this novel idea back in the day before everyone had a podcast to start a podcast. And that's how it kind of took off. Like, we didn't even really know each other when we started Heretic Happy Hour.
No.
And it just kind of became this whole thing, like way back in the day, like 2000, I don't know, 17, I think.
Yeah.
And that's how we got to know each other. But we did live shows down in SoCal, and it was really fun. And so like I went down to Southern California, like, I don't know, 7 or 8 times throughout the years. And it just kind of grew from there.
And how would you explain who your, I'm going to use a marketing term, but your target audience is with the publishing company, with the media? Who are you attracting? Who are you, if I may now use a Christian word, called to?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well,
Keith, why don't you take that?
I'll try that one. And Matt, you can fill in the blanks if I miss anything. I mean, so Matt and I didn't start Quoir, right? We were authors with Quoir initially.
Right.
Before about 3 years ago, we became the co-owners of the company. And so the audience for Quoir is kind of the people we were writing to at the time. And that audience is primarily kind of what Ralph, the original founder, cultivated in what he was publishing those first several years of the company, which is, I always tend to say the audience is anyone maybe who was raised in a religious, background, maybe evangelical, something like conservative, but they are starting to ask the same kind of questions we're talking about, Quoir. What I loved about Quoir as an author, what attracted me to Quoir as an author was that they were really willing to take risks and challenges. They were willing to publish books that really no other Christian publisher would publish. That they really were willing to challenge this sort of the status quo of religion. And that's what attracted me to Quoir. That's what I love about Quoir. And that's what Matt and I have tried to continue, since we've become co-owners about 3 years ago. So what we've done though also is expand that a little bit. So we're still continuing to publish those kind of challenging, radical, rock the boat kind of books where, those books that ask the hard questions or the questions you're not supposed to ask. And so that's really the core of what we publish. But Matt and I have also started to say, like, we want Quoir to just be we don't want to be a Christian publisher. We want to publish great books. And so that means we publish poetry, children's books, fiction, science fiction, art books. We've published an art and poetry book. We're going to publish an art book coming up here in a few months with different people. So really it's just wanting to champion people who are creative and have something to say that we think is going to help people, kind of, again, challenge them. I mean, let me go back to the question you asked Matthew, but I didn't get a chance to respond because I think it fits with this idea of what Quoir is all about. I literally have this. I'm showing you this horrible, ragged piece of paper. It's been in my wallet since I was in high school. And I wrote down this quote from Lord Byron. And it says, "For words are things, and a small drop of ink falling like dew upon a thought produces that which makes thousands, perhaps millions, think. The word shall make you think, and thought shall make you free." I wrote that down and put that in my wallet, and I've kept it in my wallet all this time. And to me, that has been my reason for writing. And I think it's my reason that I'm excited about Quoir is that we're wanting to publish things that do that get people to think. People don't have to necessarily agree with us as authors or with the authors we publish, because frankly, Matthew and I have published books by authors. We don't agree with everything they say in the book, but we think it's valuable that they are asking the right questions. They are getting people, to challenge the status quo and to think about things in important ways. So for me, that's a very long answer to your question, but that to me is what I'm excited about. That's what I think I would say Quoir is really all about and who we're trying to reach.
What a time to be alive. When you are working with these authors, these storytellers, these communicators, what is some reoccurring themes that you've noticed with them, specifically barriers to getting their work out there? Do you think it's more in the ideation process, sharing your story, like the bravery with that? Do you think it's afterwards promoting their work? Like, where do you see the hiccups?
Yeah, I think both of those things, but yeah, like at least a lot of new authors, right? Like it's really awkward for some folks to like they want to write the book, but then they don't want to talk about it. Yeah. Right? Like they want to do the thing, but then they don't, and that I think maybe there's like a self-confidence thing. There's not thinking that you have something valuable to say, and that's something I struggled with. Like funny is like I don't really write about theology anymore, but I used to really write heavily about theology. And then I was more nervous about writing about Tolkien and Lord of the Rings as like a literary criticism, because I was like, well, there's been like 1,000 books written about this one book. Like, what do I have to say? And it's like, well, maybe nothing 100% uniquely like revelatory, but also completely revelatory because no one else speaks exactly and writes exactly like I do.
Yeah.
And so you always have your voice and you always have your perspective, right? And no one else has exactly your voice and exactly your perspective. So even though a lot of ink has been spilled about whatever your topic is, whatever your passion is, no one is uniquely you. And just like figure out how to find your confidence, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, let me just tack onto that. Like, part of what I do with Quoir is, it's sort of like I review most of the books that get sent to us and decide whether we're going to publish them or not, and then talk with the author, work with them, and that kind of thing.
So you can blame Keith if you don't, you know, if we say no.
Yeah, it's my fault. But so I see everything like what you just said, you know, there, Heather, like all of the above. There's several authors we published that I'm not going to name names because I don't think this is a.
Go ahead. I won't tell nobody.
This wouldn't be a shock, and they've said this themselves as well. But for example, we published an author named Karen Schock a couple years ago, and Karen was someone who, as an evangelical Christian, conservative Christian, was on the stage. She was in a place of leadership, and then when she started questioning her beliefs, you know, that went away. She lost those privileges. People tried to quiet her and silence her. And when I met her, she was at a place where she didn't feel like she had a voice. And I got to be someone to tell her, you're going to find your voice. And when you do, I'm going to be excited to like help you publish those, you know, the things that you're writing. Because she was writing some things, but it was only in private. She wasn't sharing it with everybody.
Right.
And I could see like, oh my gosh, there are people right now that desperately need to read what you're saying and the way you're saying it. And there's another author with their book's coming out in a couple of weeks, actually, from at least this recording, John Suarez. And his book is phenomenal. I mean, it's seriously just a very beautiful, fantastic book. And my wife is reading it right now and like in tears. Like it's just really moving, a very beautiful book. But I know that when John initially sent me some drafts of his chapters, before he did, he told me he had written several chapters and he deleted them.
Yeah.
And it just broke my heart. I was like, John, send them to me. Don't delete them. Okay.
Yeah.
Because again, it's just having that confidence, feeling like, do I have a voice? Does anyone care? Am I any good? And as authors, I mean, Matthew and I both have been in that place. Sometimes when I write a book, I don't know that it's any good until I get the feedback, until someone reads an advanced copy and says, wow, that was amazing. Like until I hear that from them, I don't know. Maybe it's garbage. Maybe it's horrible, you know? And so, you know, it's wonderful that we get to kind of be that for some authors. But also like Matt was saying, my other side, the other hat I wear with Quoir is marketing and promotions. And it is working with those authors after they've written and we've published that book, to again, have the confidence to go out there and do podcast interviews and maybe do a live event and maybe read some of their book, you know, in front of people and sign their books and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, we kind of have to help authors at every stage of that. And so I guess what I would say, if anyone's listening and you're an author or you would like to be an author or a writer, and you struggle with any of those things, you're not alone. It's very, very common. Even like Matt and I publish lots of books, it still doesn't go away.
Lots of books. No, it doesn't go away. And it's like, it's funny because it's like, it can feel random sometimes, right? Like I've written books that have sold thousands of copies, right? Yeah. And the one that has sold the most, my first reviewer on my pre-book release review said, don't publish this book. And I was like, go fuck yourself, dude. I'm publishing this book. Right. You're an advanced reader. It's already like designed and, you know,
late. It's happening.
It's too late, man. And then it went on to be my best-selling book. And then I've sold books that have been like maybe more vanity projects, or maybe they're a little bit odd, or just because I want to write them. And I've sold maybe 100 or 150. And it can't it can't be the case where you judge your worth and your value as a writer by how many you sell or how many you don't sell or how many great reviews you get. Like, those are all great, and Keith helps people get reviews and do marketing and all that stuff. But it's like, whether you, again, going back to Kate Bush, you could have 30 years down the road and all of a sudden, like, the right people see your book and it gets promoted and like everyone realizes how much of a fucking genius you are.
Yeah.
And it's like, do not measure your worth by like your current level of success in this
Preach.
like end stage capitalist hellhole we're descending into. Like,
Word.
you know,
this is a assumption. I've never written a book, but I know just creating content and talking to other creators, since we're kind of post burning everything down and reconstructing ideas and so forth, knowing that Aunt Janet, who's still pissed at you that you're not going to church anymore, is going to see it. You know, you may be excited and want to use your voice, but it's so sensitive. Some of the stuff you're talking about, there's still trauma attached to that.
Yeah.
You know, it's literally just another thing that feels like it's going to separate you from people, and it's so painful. How do you help authors navigate that?
We actually have not a lot, but at least one I can think of, maybe two authors I can think of two that we publish with Quoir, that the name they publish their book under is not their real name.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, you know, sometimes people will decide because of some of those reasons you just gave, like it's the things I'm talking about are too personal. Family members are going to find this book and read this book and be offended or ask questions I'm not ready to answer right now. And so, yeah, they choose to publish under a different name.
Yeah. I mean, that's the simplest answer.
Yeah.
As a more like abstract and existential answer, like, I think figure out a way to like become who you are and not be defined by those things. Like, I know it's hard and painful and like losing people is difficult. I'm not going to like trivialize or minimize it, but there's freedom on the other side of it. Like, I mean, just as someone who has gone through the fact, like, I don't talk to most of my family and my wife doesn't talk to any of her family. And there's freedom on the other side of that because those people don't respect boundaries. They're not curious. They don't necessarily care about you as you are. They care about you as you were 30 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
And they want that. And there's this term that I think David Schnarch, the psychologist, introduced. It's like, it's comparing like differentiation and emotional fusion. And most of us are emotionally fused to each other, where we have to think like each other. We have to act like each other. We have to have the same interests in order to be like paired with each other. Like, our spouse has to have our same interests, and we're emotionally fused, and that's really unhealthy. What we really need is differentiation. We need to be who we are wholly and stand on our own 2 feet, and then bring that to the relationship. And if someone can't handle that, that relationship's not worth it. Now, I say that as a caveat. Most people, like, I'm not saying burn your relationships to the ground and fucking, you know, I'm just saying on the other side of that, there can be liberation and freedom if you're able to go through that, you know, dark night of the soul. But also tread lightly and like, don't just go out there guns blazing, because there are consequences to this shit. And so, you know, use a pseudonym, you know, use like, but use your, like, find your voice. Don't let that be something that deters you from saying what you need to say. There are always ways. There's always ways to say it and still, you know, protect those precious relationships you might have. Yeah.
Well, Matthew and I, we do write in our own names, and we are out there, right? We do say things that piss people off. And Matthew and I both have I've lost friendships over things I've blogged about or things I've, my books have said. And it's really painful. It does suck. And so because of that, I understand why some people don't want to go there. But for me, at the end of the day, yes, it really does suck that it does hurt that I have lost some friendships over disagreements on things that I've written about. But yeah, I've gotten way more feedback from people sending me messages, thanking me for the things I've said, grateful that I wrote that book. You know, telling me these wonderful stories of how the book or something I said in one of my books has healed them or empowered them or set them free. And you know what? I think it's worth it. For me anyway, it is. That
Yeah. Tell that story about that listener from Heretic Happy Hour.
Oh, but yeah. This was early on with Heretic Happy Hour. So when we started Heretic Happy Hour again, early days of
ever, by the way. That is such a great name.
Yeah. So yeah, this is like 7 or 8 years ago, and we got a bunch of heat first of all, and when we started the podcast because everybody was pissed off that we dropped the F-bomb once in a while, and so we used language, and we had an explicit marker on our podcast for language, and we had so many people complaining about the use of the language and why can't we clean it up and blah blah blah, right? And anyway, we tried to deal with that. We didn't change anything, but we tried to explain that to people. But in the midst of that, we got a message from someone sent us a private message about the podcast, and this guy, I think this is the one you're referring to, Matt. This guy says to me, he says to us in the message, he says, I was flying out to see my brother in another state, and I was really depressed. I was thinking of killing myself. And I thought after this weekend was over with my brother, I was going to go back home and kill myself. And he picked me up at the airport. I got in the car, and on the way back to his house, he was listening to the Heretic Happy Hour podcast. And he said, just hearing you guys, even the freedom that you spoke, honestly, that you were using language, but you were talking, you were using that language to talk about things that were real and true. He said, it made me feel like that, number one, I shouldn't kill myself. And number two, maybe I should give God another try. And oh my gosh, when you get a message like that, I'm like, you know what? If you're offended that we're using language, tough. This isn't for you. But you know what? If it's for someone like that, I'm not changing anything. Right.
Yeah.
And so, that was an amazing testimony. And, that kind of thing's got to be happening all the time. Be who you are.
Let's go a layer deeper in our last little bit here. We're talking about tactically using your voice, putting your message out there through a book or whatever medium it is, and some of the fears and barriers that we have with that. As a ex-evangelical Christian gal who still is wrestling with calling and what's my life purpose and what are we doing here on earth if all this narrative isn't necessarily true before. I think trying to wrestle with agenda-based language in our role in communication has been interesting for me because back in the day, a girl was all like, a very, very verbal, passionate communicator, and it always had an agenda. You need to do this.
Yeah.
And my role, my service was hilarious now because I was like 21 and knew nothing, was to convince you. That was my calling, convince you of these things. And that gave my life value and worth. And now, still in my bones, knowing I'm a communicator, it's been interesting for me figuring out how to frame my language and my show and my work and my content to be helpful, but not agenda-based.
Yep.
And also coming across as like a hierarchy, like you need me to help save you and get you on the right track because I got my stuff together.
Yep.
Messy ass question. I threw up all over you guys, but I'm curious, reflecting back on kind of calling and our role in that. How do you view your platforms now and your role in it?
Yeah, it's tough because you have to find a balance, right? It's striking a balance in this, like, if you're in any kind of leadership, right? And I say that loosely, right? Like I'm like, I can't think of my life and I'm like, I'm leading any sort of thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you lead. If you're writing a book and it's novel, and every book is novel in some, unless you're copywriting, plagiarizing, like you're leading some new thoughts, or you're leading someone in a story, or you're leading someone through, ideas on a podcast, whatever it is. I think just like having that balance of like, you're confident in where you're at, but you're also saying, look, at my life, the way I view it, and how I strike the balance is like my life is a journal, and you guys can look at my journal, which is vulnerable, and I understand that, and I understand I'm going to look stupid sometimes. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to take myself too seriously and say, like, look, this is the end all be all. This is like, I wrote a book that is novel, Mimetic Theory and Middle Earth. Like, it takes the ideas of Tolkien and combines them with Rene Girard and reads Tolkien through a lens philosophically that no one has ever written a book about it. And I got that confirmed. At the end of the day, though, it's like, this is just the first voice in a chorus of voices. So please, I hope some people have more things to say, right? Let's add to the conversation. So when I think, unfortunately, a lot of churches, politics, businesses have this hierarchical with the people on the quote unquote top, tell others what to do. I view, honestly, my role as someone at the bottom. Like, look, I'm working class. We're all working class. I'm just putting myself out there on these ideas, but we subvert everything. Like, these are great ideas, and this is a way to serve other people. And I view my role as a podcaster, as a business owner, as a farmer, even, how do I serve people? Whether it's food, whether it's books, whether it's ideas, how do I serve people? Like, how do I make this short life that I have contribute to the greater whole? Sounds communistic. I know American listeners might not like that, but
yeah.
Beautifully said. Keith, what about you?
Yeah. Well, I have been more and more convinced ever since I, no longer a Christian pastor or minister on staff anywhere at a church. More and more as I get away from that, I just tell people all the time, I'm not your guru. I don't have the answers. I don't know the answers. The truth is, no one does, right? You talk about going from that place of being so certain, and I was there too. I was into apologetics. I was all about proving I was right and all that. And just finally realized, like, you know what? Let's just embrace the mystery. When we're talking about God, no one knows anything. God is a being beyond all human comprehension. So I'm not going to tell you all about him because I don't know almost anything about God. I can experience God and I can share some of that experience with other people, but it's not from a place of I'm right and you're wrong. We're all teachers and we're all learners. And so, and I guess so the one thing I think as well, like, as far as like finding meaning in our lives and things like that, I used to think that purpose, that calling, that meaning was something external to me. It's like a treasure buried somewhere that I got to find it, X marks the spot. I got to go out there and get it. And more and more realizing, like, no, I already am who I am, and I'm growing and I'm learning just like everybody else. And the only meaning in life, I think, is like, just find what's meaningful for you, what has meaning for you, and do that. And that's the meaning of life. Find what's meaningful for you and do that. For me, that's writing. It's communicating. It's helping other people if I can, to think or to grow or to, help them along their path a little bit. But it's, gosh, I don't know the answers. And I certainly not running around passing out, answers to anything.
Chick tracks. Yeah. But also, and Keith, you can just, I think you'd probably agree with me, but feel free to disagree. But it's also not like, we're not wishy-washy. We're also like convicted about things, right? Like, so, there's justice issues and racial issues and justice, ecological and economic justice and bringing about change that lifts every person up, every group up. And so we are convicted. Like, this isn't some sort of like, oh, we can't know anything, so it's some form of like moral nihilism. I think it's helpful, and I'll use a fancy theological term, apophatic.
Oh, God, I've never heard that word before in my life. What?
But it's a really simple idea. It's just, we always talk about God in terms of like what God is. God is omnipowerful, all powerful, all whatever. Apophatic says what God isn't, and that is vitally important and helpful. Like, so if we say God is not violent, like that's a really strong claim, but it's apophatic. It's saying what God isn't, and that helps us get to things, and that helps us be, I think, not certain but convicted. And so we can be those two things at the same time. Like if I say God is not racist, God is not homophobic, I'm saying a lot, but I'm not actually adding to what God is. I'm adding to what God is through negation, and that's really helpful.
Ooh. Y'all sure y'all ain't preachers? This is like church.
I'm not a preacher. I'm a farmer, man. I'm a farmer.
No, I don't know, man. Okay, so on the flip side to that, we alluded to it earlier, the putting yourself out there, promoting, marketing, and so forth. Like, I don't know if y'all were kind of taught this, and I know, just speaking from experience, like as a Southern woman in the church, you know, being kind of the servant and the lowly was very highlighted, and anything that kind of put yourself out front from an ego perspective was frowned upon. And so, high level question, y'all can kind of tackle it from wherever you want to, but thinking through like the servant, the giver, the helper, I'm just here to change the world and I don't need the spotlight. I don't need it. You know, that kid, that sounds really sweet, but it also costs us so much because our books aren't getting out there, or our work's not getting out there, and we're not, to your point, Matthew, like the conviction and the confidence isn't coming across because we're afraid to be strong. Tackle that however y'all want to. What you think? Help me.
Let me tell a quick story, because that's exactly who I was when I first started writing books and publishing books. I would be invited to go to an event and speak with several other people at an event. And I had books. I put them in a box. I put them in my trunk. I would drive to the event. I would speak at the event, but I would not take the box out of the trunk because I didn't want to promote myself. I'm just going to wait for someone to ask me, do you have a book? And then, come follow me out to the park. Guess how many books I sold? None. And so I remember one time a really good friend of mine, also an author, challenged me on that. And because I had a full-time job. I wasn't writing for a living or anything like that. And I was even saying something like, I don't need to sell books and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, yeah, but what if you did? What if like providing for your family, did depend on how many people bought your book? And then he says, also at the same time, why did you even bother to write that book? Did you not want people to read it? Like, because until they buy it and read it, what's the point? And so those simple questions helped me to kind of flip a switch and turn a corner and say, okay, no, I mean, I can't complete the process. Like, if I had the idea, I thought this was important. I felt like I needed to communicate this. I used my gifts and my talents. I worked really hard to write this book and make it really great. And then I went through the process and the expense of publishing it. And now it physically exists in the world. Until someone buys that book and reads that book, you know what I mean? You haven't closed the loop. There's no point. Yeah. And so I understand that feeling of, it's not me, it's the Lord, or I don't want to promote myself, or that kind of, it's just false piety. It's nonsense. That
also becomes the brag.
Yes.
Because it's like that Bible verse where allegedly Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. It says Moses was the most humble man. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, really, Moses? Were you? Because you had to tell it. You're so humble. You had to tell us about it. And so I'd tell people to, if I had the chance, like, be careful not to fall into that trap of like, because that itself becomes kind of like your idol, right? Like, look at how much I do for the Lord. Look at how much I give. And it's like nothing is about as if for me, except like a lot of those people do talk about how much they give, and it's like that becomes the idol of like that's the brag. It's the humble brag, and that to me is like I would much rather I'm not like braggadocious and I'm not promoting that, but I'd rather have someone who's like, this is my book, I want you to read it. At least I know, like, rather than like, I hope someone asks me to buy my book, because I'm not really, it's just about, it's about the Lord. It was, I saw that in music, like, oh, it wasn't me playing, it was the Lord through my fingers. And it's like, okay, dude, just say you're good, man. It's all good. It's all good. Just say you're good. Just say you killed it tonight.
Practiced and you worked really hard and you did a great job, and receive it. It's okay.
Yeah. And find that balance of like confident, but not like you're not cocky, but you're confident.
Yeah, that's right.
What's the difference?
I think
yeah.
cockiness is like, I think cockiness is like confidence without any balance, without any sort of like tension of like the person who's cocky is going to be shocked when they lose.
Mm-hmm.
The person who's confident is not going to be shocked because they know they lose a lot. They're going to be upset and they're going to say, how do I get better? The person who's cocky is like, they might get the rug cut out from it. They're not going to know what the hell to do because they're so sure of themselves. Whereas the person who's confident will be like, yo, I've taken a lot of L's and I've learned from them.
Mm.
And I can be confident in growing from my losses. Whereas the cocky person won't even admit they've lost ever. They're like,
Right.
you know, it might not to be political, but it's like Donald.
Fault. Yeah.
It's like Trump, like he's 1,000-0. He's never taken an L. It's like, yeah, but that's not realistic. We've all taken L's.
Yeah. Yeah. If y'all had a magic wand and every author from this point forward that you work with would do this one thing to get their book out there in the world, and they did it with thrill and joy in their hearts, and you didn't have to convince them to do it, what would that one thing be?
Oh man, Keith, you got one?
Well, what is the
magic
one thing?
wand?
It's hard to say. I mean, technically there is a thing that we ask authors to do, which is to put together like a book launch team and all that. And that in addition to all the other things that we do to market and promote books seems to make a big difference as far as the success of the launch of that book. But beyond that, I think it's still part of that. I think it's a combination of one, having the author have this genuine self-confidence, not cockiness, but a self-confidence in themselves and in the book, and an excitement about the book, and they really genuinely want people to read this book.
Are they not excited?
Well, no. Listen, sometimes they are not, and that's things that. Yes, listen. This is what this is my learning curve, right? Because again, what I do is interview authors that submit books to us, and I'm trying to spend time with them to question them, because sometimes they've written a really great book, but all they really want is for it to be published, and then they're going to check a box on their bucket list and move on to the next thing. Like now I'm going to go skydiving, or now I'm going to go scuba diving. Like they don't really, they're not authors in the sense of like, I love writing. I love this book. And now that I've written the book, I want now to spend my energy trying to go out there and tell people about the book, right? The authors we've had that are the most successful authors are the ones where we don't have to tell them anything. Like every time I turn around, they're on another podcast or on another show. They're putting themselves out there. They're doing stuff. They're creating their own book tour, and they're traveling the country and they're doing, events with their book. And again, Quoir isn't doing that. We didn't even ask them to do that. I mean, we're very happy, but like we didn't have to ask them because that's just something about them and their book that they're excited about and that they want, they want to get the word out there. If every one of our authors could be like that, we would be super happy.
Yeah, you got to almost treat it like you're bringing, like, it's not this dramatic. I don't want to make it that deep, but it's like you're bringing a child into the world, right? Let's use that analogy.
Yeah.
You don't want to bring a child into the world and then sit it in a room for the rest of its life, like just so it's on your shelf. So it's like, right. I got this thing on my shelf that I can look at and be like, I did that.
Yeah.
You want the child to go out and experience the world. Yeah. You want the child to go out. They want to go to here. They want to go there. They want to go all over the place. They want to see what this life is all about. That's your book. And your book is not going to do that. Whatever you create, it could be album, it could be art, whatever. Book is just what we do. It needs to go out in the world and be read by other people. I don't say dog ear it, but some people dog ear their books. Yeah. It needs to be on shelves. It needs to get dust. It needs to be wrinkled. It needs to have things written in the margins. Yeah. It needs to have some pages torn once in a while because not all my books look pristine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it has to experience the world. Like you have to be your own retailer as an author. You have to be your own marketer. You have to be more, if we're more excited about your book than you, that's a problem because we're excited about your book as a publisher, but at the end of the day, it's not our book. We're helping you. We might be the, to complete the analogy, we might be the doula or we might be the you know, the OBGYN helping bring it into the world, or the pediatrician to help it along. But we cannot be more excited about your book than you. And so you just got to go live it. You want your book to experience the world. I've some of the best things I've ever gotten, the best messages. I was on a train and they sent me a picture of someone reading my book in some random ass place. I'm like, that's fucking cool. Yeah. Like, that's amazing. Like,
yeah,
I don't need to sell 1 million copies and get rich, but I need to get my book in the hands of other people. So you can be like, look, I'm impacting people that I don't even know where this place is on this train. I don't even know who this person is. Just like, I have a friend who saw someone read and I've had that happen multiple times. And it's like, oh my God, that's really cool.
That is cool. So I love that analogy, Matt. It's funny because Matt and I haven't talked about this together, but I love what you just said, because it's like your life, your book needs to have a life, right? Mm-hmm. And your book doesn't have a life if you don't kind of bring it into life. You kind of have to help it along. And so, yeah, exactly. Like, if your book is just on a shelf somewhere, you know, and that's the end of it, then that book is kind of dead. It doesn't really have a life. But yeah, if you can get the book out there and people can read it, then that's when you get those amazing messages from people. I have a folder. I keep a folder. I've kept it for years, of people telling me either things like, wow, Keith, I read this book and here's how it impacted me. Here's how it helped me, or things like that, where like, here's a picture of the book on the shelf, you know, at the last bookstore in LA, or this bookstore over here. Like, and I love that stuff. It's exciting to know, like, wow, look at my book. Look what my book is doing. It's like having a child. Look at there. I'm so proud of my book. It's out there in the world and it's doing things, and it's visiting places I have never been, and it's touching people I've never talked to. And yeah, that book has a life. And I think that's the difference.
Have you all read Elizabeth Gilbert, Big Magic? I love it. I love it. Her idea is like that ideas are living entities, and if you don't do something with that idea, it will go to someone else.
Yes. And I call that idea space. Yes, that's
right. Yeah. And that made me think about with the books. It's like, if you don't nurture it and let it live, like that concept, those ideas. And I know people can't take your story, but it has to breathe and it has to exist. So
it will find a way. It will find a way to get into the world. Yeah, exactly.
I'm so happy I met both of you. Y'all are so cool. And I wish I lived like in a neighborhood where I could just like have coffee and donuts and argue about things. It would just be the best thing ever.
Yeah, we haven't had a chance to argue yet.
I know. When is that going to happen?
I love debating and wrestling with people about deep ideas. And it's always grateful when I can find people who are game. So thank you. Thank you both. I have a final question. Do the pastor thing. One final point. But before then, we have a bunch of storytellers, creatives, communicators, old souls listening to this show. What would be the next step for them to get involved in your world? What are you most excited about?
Well, if they're an author and they have a book, they can go to quoir.com, quoir.com. And there's a place there for you to submit your pitch for a manuscript or something like that. Or if you have a book and we'd like to talk to you, that'd be great. You know, I'm an author. I've got tons of books. They're all on Amazon. You can go check them out. And of course, the podcast Matthew and I do together, Heretic Happy Hour. I do a solo podcast called Second Cup with Keith.
How do you all have time in the day? Oh my God.
I don't sleep.
Yeah, that's. Yeah.
No, I actually do sleep. I don't know, when you love something, like you become good at it and efficient at it, like, and you work hard at it and it doesn't seem like work. Like, I don't mind working 12 to 14 hours a day, because half the shit that I do, I would do anyway. Like,
I love it.
That's, I mean, we're trying to get these ideas out there, because I think, like, I mean, it's like when you think about ideas, are they real? It's like, no, they're not real, but they're also real. It's like I think of like every god that has ever been concocted is real, because it's fundamentally changed how the world is. Yeah. So, like, you know, we need to talk about these things. I hope we're doing a good job of having these conversations, what we do, you know?
It feels like it.
Feels like it.
I think
it pisses some people off, but I think you're going to piss someone off no matter what you do. No matter what you do, you could be in any situation. You could be writing about anything, talking about anything. You're never going to have an answer or a response to anything, a trauma, a controversy. You're never going to have a response that's going to be embraced by everyone, right? So you know,
I mean, I got mad at y'all earlier because you said he didn't like turkey. Remember that?
I'm sorry.
it's not that I don't like turkey. It's just that this is my point. Here,
There's no point. There's no point.
I'm gonna convince you.
Disgraceful.
If you love turkey, you're gonna eat it more than once a year. I love taco trucks, and I don't get to say I love taco trucks, but I only eat it once a year. I eat taco trucks probably like I'm in California, so twice a week.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, obviously I love
You
it,
don't
but
put your Christmas tree up all the time. You do it because it's sacred.
Oh, is it?
touche. Fair enough.
Okay,
fair enough.
Last
All right,
question, we're
fair
gonna go
enough.
out of here. Last question. What is something in your life that you are deeply questioning? And it can be related to what we've talked about.
Wow.
It could be, why does Heather like turkey so much? It could be whatever it is, but what do you have a big question mark around right now in your life?
Oh,
I've got a big one. But it's like deep.
Go.
Yeah.
Keith, you go.
Mine's kind of silly, but it's not sort of silly, but we talked about this before. Like, you know, I've outgrown of all that stuff I grew up with in my Christian background, and you know, I don't believe almost any of that stuff anymore. But one of the things that I used to believe when I was in college was this whole like Left Behind stuff, the end times, all that second coming stuff. And so now I know, I've studied the history of it. I know it's bullshit.
Yeah.
I know this guy, John Nelson Darby, made it up in 1830 or something. And I wrote a book about it. So I've closed the chapter, and I don't believe any of that stuff anymore about the hype of the end times and the second coming and the rapture and the tribulation and all that stuff. However, just watching what's going on with Donald Trump these days, I'm wondering, maybe there is an Antichrist. Maybe, I don't know.
Did you see the movie where they guillotine your head?
Yeah. We're not at that part yet, but we're getting close.
Did that.
Yeah, sure, of course. He's putting people in concentration camps. I mean, zip tying children, and
you said this was silly. This is scary and depressing.
Very scary. So anyway, that's what came to my mind when you asked the question.
Matt, what about you?
Yeah. So I'm writing a book on The Last of Us. I don't know if you've ever played the video games.
No,
I have.
It was also made into a TV show, which isn't as good as the games. But so I write about in one of the chapters. I don't want. I'm not trying to say too much when I say this, but I'm thinking about this, and I wrote about it. I don't know if I see love as necessarily good. I see it as just a very powerful force, because it seems that we can do really heinous things in the name of love.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wrestling with that. Like, I'm not saying love isn't good. I'm saying I don't know if we should just think it as exclusively good. And that can become really ambiguous. And I won't give any spoilers to the Last of Us story, because I wouldn't want to ruin that for anyone who wants to engage in the games or the TV show. But I think in any instance where we're in very dire situations, or in certain situations in life, we might do things in the name of love that are morally really objective, like what's the word I'm looking for? Objectionable. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wrestling with that now, because I do believe love is like the most powerful force in the world, and it can be, like I said, we can do really bad shit in the name of love.
I know this is another podcast, but then you think about God is love, and if love is not necessarily good, is God always good?
I haven't gone there yet, but yeah.
Podcast number 2, digging into that.
That's that'd be a good topic. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I do explore that in one of the chapters of because I mean, The Last of Us is it's like an apocalyptic end of the world type of game setting, and it pushes the bounds of like what we think we believe and what we'll do, and if this happens, I'll do this because I'm a upstanding citizen, or I'm a good person. And then the game's like, the fuck you are. Let's challenge that and see how good of a person you are, and see what you'll do even on a controller in the name of what you call love. And so that gets really, it's heavy. It's really heavy.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you both. This was
thank you.
Awesome. Yeah.